A French company, Ballore, controls almost every major port in West Africa. Its latest acquisition was the Port of Tema in Ghana. This port, now under foreign control, is among the top ports in Africa. A board member of the Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority had this to say about the status of the port.
As a revelation to me, it is evidence of Ghana's new credibility.
Hello, I'm Henia, and welcome to this week's edition of Africa Today, which is focusing on how a French company riddled with cases of corruption is controlling strategic ports of several West African countries. Now we shall be asking what is preventing these countries from taking control of their own ports. In the second part of our program, we shall discuss the decision by the Democratic Republic of Congo to put the military in charge of two provinces in the eastern part of the country where rebel groups roam with impunity. But will military forces end violence in this mineral-rich region? Join us for more here at Africa Today. And don't forget to send us your views as you watch our show.
France controls West African ports. A new leaked report obtained by Africa Confidential shows how French ports and a media billionaire gained control of Ghana's busiest port. The report notes that the agreement which handed Ballore the control of Tema port is tilted against Ghana's interests. French billionaire Vincent Ballore has been accused of shady deals and underhand dealings in the processes leading to his country's control of Ghana's largest port. The author of the report explains on why he worked on the report.
So I looked at it and I thought this is extremely interesting. I don't know why it's remained secret. It had already been done a year beforehand, and some of the stuff in it was very interesting indeed, and that the public deserved to know more about it. They deserve to know everything that was in this report that would be done by the minister.
Tema Port, which handles around 70% of Ghana's imports and exports, is a high-tech facility that also serves the hinterland of Burkina Faso and Mali. Ballore, which is backed by the government in Paris, runs 18 ports in mostly former French colonies across West Africa. Now, this monopoly has ensured that France maintains its control over the countries of this region. Now, for more analysis on the subject, we have contacted Joseph Ochieno, a writer and African affairs analyst. Now, thank you very much, sir, for your time. Now, can you first tell us briefly about how this French conglomerate won control of Ghana's biggest port?
Very few African countries have managed to negotiate successfully and competitively, as it were, major infrastructure projects like this that involve huge amount of money. Somehow, particularly traditionally, it was the case that African governments and African businesses generally would go for companies that are generally from the West. They will tend to look at them much more favorably. That is changing now with the emergence of China. So as it happens, this conglomerate had been operating in the region, has been in fact, for the last 25 or so years, having complete control and domination of most of the ports in West Africa. So as it happens, although as recent as 5-6 years ago, there were complaints and investigations and indeed arrests in Paris, somehow Ghanaian authorities looked the other way.
Thank you for that, Ochieno, African affairs analyst, and stay tuned for more.
Meridian Port Services, or MPS, is the operator of the container terminal at Tema Port. MPS is a joint venture between the Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority and Meridian Port Holdings, with Ballore Transport and Logistics and APM Terminals as the two main shareholders.
Africa Confidential says that a secret February 2018 report delivered to Ghanaian ministers showed the terms of the agreement between MPS and the state were so tilted against Ghana's interests, and they should be renegotiated immediately. The contract was apparently not changed. Now, Mr. Ochieno, is it true that Ballore's control of Tema Harbour is tilted against Ghana's interests?
It is clearly tilted against Ghana's interest, a major project like this, and a key entry port for not only Ghana, but countries like Burkina Faso and others, the main hinterland. Tema is one of the major cities of Ghana, 25 or so kilometers off of Accra, where you would argue that as this country continues to grow, there would be an industrial conurbation between the two. So it's extremely important. And yet, it would appear, as I say, this guy is overestimated, overpresented and fudged figures, where Ghana now, in a project and a contract like this, losing billions of dollars.
Ballore has been accused of corrupting foreign public officials and complicity in corruption in a bid to get lucrative contracts. Ballore and his company reportedly undercharged for work on behalf of presidential candidates in Guinea and Togo in return for port contracts.
The concessions Ballore won from Ghana are reportedly similar to those which he obtained for his operations at the port of Lomé, Togo, in return for financing a top political consultancy to help the country's president, Faure Gnassingbe, win re-election in 2010. Ballore also used a similar strategy with the Guinea government to take over the management of the port of Conakry. In February, Ballore and two of his fellow executives admitted in a plea bargain to bribing the Togolese president in exchange for favors at the port. A French journalist says Africans are suffering due to corruption perpetrated by Ballore.
The main victims are Africans. That's because the fragility of the democratic systems they're trying to put in place, in particular Guinea, because Togo is not democratic at all, are being compromised. This isn't directly by Africans themselves, but primarily in this case by outside organizations who have business interests in the region.
Ballore also has a contract to provide logistics services to French troops carrying out military operations across West Africa. Now, by setting particularly short deadlines on tender calls for French army transport contracts in West Africa, France has ensured that potential competitors of Ballore Group are locked out. Now, Mr. Ochieno, Ballore seems to be working closely with the French army in terms of logistics. Now, how is this transportation company advancing French military objectives in West Africa?
The Western companies and Western governments and, in fact, Western organizations work, even if they're basically charities with soft power, they will engage in intelligence gathering. They will engage in advancing and pushing forward strategic foreign policies for whichever respective government. In this case, because actually they're about logistics. Logistics, in many cases, will, tend to be very much about equipment, and in one way or another, they will be linked to armament. The competition in that region is huge, and the competition will be between America, France, and of course, as I said, the advancement of China. In many cases these days, people will argue that, well, it's in their interest to be there because of Boko Haram and other terrorist groups in North Africa and the Sahel. But underlying, beyond all these other things, is basically the strengthening of the post-colonial interests on the African continent. It's a classic one, really.
After officially ending its colonial control over many African countries, France still continues to be an influential player in its former colonies. Paris maintains its stranglehold in Francophone African and other countries on the continent through a network of French and African diplomats, politicians, army personnel, and businessmen.
Now, Mr. Ochieno, is French influence the main reason why West African countries are unable to take control of their own ports through local companies?
There is absolutely no excuse. I think it's really lack of leadership, and perhaps they've been able to convince most of these governments that they will build, they will run them, and possibly do so in a much more efficient, much more competitive, and much more secure way than local companies. I would, if I was in a position of authority, think very differently. Even if it was much more expensive, I would go for buy local, construct local, manage local, and ensure the advancement of local domestic African skills. And after all, this is a strategic security question for these countries.
Now, Mr. Ochieno, you have stated there that the control of ports is a strategic question. Now, do you think the control of 18 major West African ports by a single French company is compromising security and independence of the countries involved?
The simple answer is yes. It is quite clearly the case that the implication for this strategic national security for respective countries. It is actually clearly the case that the strategic, if you like, regional strategic security question for all these countries. And my hope is that going forward, some of these things may be reviewed. You're absolutely right. These are major strategic areas for these countries because it's got huge direct security questions and national and indeed regional security questions for these countries.
Now, thanks a lot, Mr. Ochieno, for your insight today. We shall now go for a short break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the security situation in the Democratic Republic of Congo, where the government has ordered the military to take over administration of 2 provinces. Don't go away.
DRC state of siege.
President Felix Tshisekedi of the Democratic Republic of Congo has ordered a 30-day state of siege in Ituri and Kivu North provinces, where rebel groups are responsible for attacks against civilians, the government and security forces. However, many Congolese are skeptical about the new move.
We know that for more than 20 years, the population has been the victim of murders, atrocities, killings. In any case, I think that for me to say that we will bring peace for 30 days is actually a dream.
Now, the Democratic Republic of Congo is facing one of the world's worst humanitarian crises, with around 20 million people facing acute food insecurity, among the highest number worldwide. Around 3.4 million children under 5 are acutely malnourished. The hunger crisis is largely caused by conflicts. A frontline nurse explains here what they are doing to protect children.
Ici, on a cherché la farine de maïs, la farine des arachides et d'huile. Et on montre aux mamans comment préparer ça. Ils peuvent aller préparer ça à la maison pour les enfants, pour les protéger contre la malnutrition.
Exploitation of natural resources continues to be a root cause and driver of conflict, with many Western multinationals reaping huge profits from minerals obtained cheaply amid the ongoing conflict eastern DRC. Congo-Kinshasa never experienced stability after the assassination of Patrice Lumumba, the first legally elected Prime Minister of the Democratic Republic of Congo. Assassination was carried out by the United States through its notorious spy agency, the CIA, in January 1961. Addressing the UN General Assembly in 2019, President Tshisekedi said if Lumumba was not assassinated, things would have been different today for this conflict-ridden country.
Now, for an incisive analysis on the insecurity in the eastern part of the Democratic Republic of Congo, we have here with us Lawrence Freeman, political and economic analyst for Africa. Thank you very much, Mr. Freeman, for your time. Now, how will the state of siege help in establishing long-lasting security and stability in the eastern part of the Democratic Republic of Congo?
I don't think it will. I don't think there is a simple military solution to the crisis. What you have in South Kivu and other parts of the district of the Democratic Republic of the Congo is decades and decades of destruction and looting. And unless those problems are addressed by appropriate national and African-wide economic development program, these other measures probably will not work.
Thank you very much for that, Mr. Lawrence Freeman, and stay tuned for more.
The Allied Democratic Forces, ADF, a rebel group formed in neighboring Uganda more than 20 years ago, is believed to be responsible for much of the recent bloodshed. Addressing the UN General Assembly in 2019, the president said this rebel group, wreaking havoc in his country, is affiliated to the ISIS or Daesh Takfiri terrorist group.
Some of these rebel movements, in particular the ADF-MTN, are carrying out terrorist attacks that are consistent with their allegiance with Daesh, which represents a new threat to my country and to the sub-region.
Sheikh Ali Amini, a Muslim cleric opposed to extremist ideology, was recently killed in the eastern part of the DRC town of Beni by unknown militants. A gunman shot Sheikh Amini during evening prayers on the first day of May and then fled. Now, the cleric was a strong critic of Takfiri terrorists in the region. His widow blamed the government for failing to protect the people.
They could have protected my husband when he was alive. They did not. I leave it all to God.
Congo's abundant minerals are considered a root cause of the conflict because the mines out of which they come are believed to be controlled by armed groups backed by foreigners with links to major global tech companies. These rebels exploit the minerals and use the revenue to fuel their activities, earning them the label conflict minerals. Many tech companies do not have a system to trace, audit and certify where their materials come from. It is therefore not surprising that many cell phones and laptops may contain conflict minerals, especially cobalt from Congo.
Now, already, a civil lawsuit has been filed in a federal court in Washington, D.C. against Apple, Google's parent company, Alphabet, Tesla, Microsoft, and Dell. They are accused of exploiting child labor in the conflict region of the Democratic Republic of Congo. Now, a human rights lawyer says they were able to link these tech giants with Congo's conflict minerals.
Trace the supply chain back from the mine where the children were either killed or maimed, and have traced it back up to these companies.
Now, Mr. Freeman, as we know, Eastern DRC is rich in minerals which are of crucial importance to the whole world. Is this the driving factor behind the conflict?
Yes, this is a major factor in the conflict. For many decades, the eastern portion of the DRC, where you have a great deal of minerals, has been a source of looting and war. And there have been international organizations involved in this looting. And these people there have never had the opportunity to actually enjoy a standard of living, to grow, to develop, to have a manufacturing industry for these resources.
The Democratic Republic of the Congo is widely believed to have mineral deposits worth an estimated $24 trillion, thus making it one of the wealthiest countries in the world. Yet, most people in this country live in abject poverty.
Mr. Freeman, now you talked about the looting of Eastern Congo's minerals and how this has impoverished the people in the region. Now, can you elaborate on who is actually stealing these resources?
Well, you have local players, but they're really they're not significant in the sense that they're not controlling the process. Don't forget, this goes back decades and decades. In fact, when Patrice Lumumba was overthrown in 1961, the first premier of the DRC, the people who were behind it were the British and the Europeans and they used the local leaders in the Katanga province against him, which is the rich province. Therefore, this policy goes back 60 years. For 60 years, there's been stealing and looting by various groups, but these groups are controlled and manipulated by much larger international financier, what I would call oligarchical financial groups. And this is a long-term policy that been going on for centuries in Africa. Cecil Rhodes is infamous for the policy of killing the natives above the ground to steal the resources under the ground.
Now, the United Nations peacekeeping mission in the Democratic Republic of Congo, known by its French acronym MONUSCO, is considered one of the most challenging peacekeeping missions under the UN.
This mission maintains at least 18,000 troops in the DRC, but has been unable to restore security in this vast Central African state. Last April, police in Goma in the eastern DRC clashed with demonstrators calling for the departure of the UN peacekeeping mission, who they accuse of having failed to stop civilian massacres.
C'était prévu que nous fassions une manifestation pacifique pour demander le départ de la MONUSCO. Et la police ne nous a pas permis qu'on puisse nous manifester librement. Ils sont venus, ils nous ont arrêtés, ils ont réprimés.
Why have UN peacekeeping forces failed to restore peace in the DRC?
As long as you have desperate economic conditions and you do not have economic development, then you cannot simply control that situation, military or police forces, because you have so many different groups that can be manipulated from the outside and their strings pulled and they're desperate themselves. And so human life is not even valued in parts of the Congo and parts of Africa. We have to change the entire paradigm in the Congo and in Africa to promote life, to promote economic development. And the West has completely failed in that regard. The Chinese are doing a lot, but it is not enough. And if the West would actually change the policy to a policy of growth, to helping people farm their lands, building manufacturing centers, building the infrastructure and rail and electricity and roads, then we could turn the situation around.
Well, our time is up for today, but we shall keep an eye on events across Africa and bring you an alternative view of what is happening. Drop us a line through our social media handle and let us know what you think. Thanks a lot for watching and goodbye for now.